So AOC is under investigation. Yeah, breaking news. Just learned about it. All right. Tom Holman. Well, I won't spoil it. We'll get into that. But we also have to get into the fraud from AOC that has been going on because it doesn't seem she is who she claims to be. And we'll get into that later. But before we get into that, let's hop into this Tom Holman AOC situation. Tom Holman just confirmed that the feds are investigating AOC for employing a criminal illegal on her staff and her personally instructing them on how to evade ICE agents.
Just one final question, Mr. Borzar, and it has to do with the region of New York and somebody who's in the news a lot lately because she's most likely planning on running for higher office. It'd be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC has come and what looks like to us crossed the line a number of times, but two very curious stories out of her office. One, as soon as you were able to regain your position as border czar, AOC had a criminal alien who was working in her congressional staff flee the country. Now, I can't quite square how that's possible. How is somebody allowed to be a criminal alien in this country and then go work in Congress where you have access to classified material and you have access to a lot of important information? Then AOC has gone on and obviously taught publicly illegal aliens how to avoid ICE. She's done this with some of her colleagues in the squad. Here's the article of the criminal alien staffer that AOC had on staff. Maybe you could just start here and as an explainer to me and to this audience, like, how's this even possible?
It's not possible, and I know that's being looked at. I can't comment on past that. I'm aware of it. We've asked ICE to drill in on that case. It's my information that they're actually can't really comment on. We don't know if it was illegal status or not at this point. It looks like it might have been temporary status, but I can't comment on the case. It's under investigation. As far as her educating people how to evade ICE arrest, she's really educating them on how to be prosecuted because there are statutes on the books, federal statute, when you knowingly hinder your removal, that's a crime. When you take steps to prevent your removal after being ordered removed by a federal judge, it's a crime. We have instructed ICE to start prosecuting these cases. If you don't want to open the door, and we have a final order removal, if you don't want to participate in getting travel documents from your home nation, you take steps to hinder your own removal, that it's a crime, you'd be prosecuted. So she can claim she's educating people to constitutional rights. I'd argue she's educating many people on how to be prosecuted. You're going to see that happening.
AOC possibly about to be prosecuted, baby. Man, do I love it. Do I absolutely love to hear that. Now, do I think it's actually going to happen? Probably not, if I'm just being completely honest. But the fact that it's even on the table, I think is absolutely phenomenal, right? I think it's absolutely phenomenal. But, of course, I'm all about honesty here. So do I think it's going to happen? No. I genuinely don't think it's going to happen. So let's not get our hopes up too high on that situation. But, there's always the possibility. If I had to, put a percentage to it, I would give it a 5% chance, so not massive, not anything significant, but it's still there, right? The possibility is still there. I'll stick with 5. I was gonna up it just a touch, but I'll stick with 5. I think 5% possibility of having her actually prosecuted is a thing, because here's the thing, when you have, and yes, I know this doesn't exactly involve people in Congress necessarily, but when you have rhinos still in the party, I think you're going to have a tough time on anything, right? So I think that's what we should more be focusing on, is getting rid of the rhinos in the party. Not necessarily because, there are some folks who, push back against the Trump administration that are Republicans. One being like a Thomas Massie. I don't think Thomas Massie has bad intentions. I somewhat like Thomas Massie so far, right? I kind of see myself in him a little bit. He just kind of pushing back a little bit, which I don't mind. I think that's a good thing. But it's the rhinos like the Susan Collins, the Lisa Murkowskis, obviously the Mitch McConnells, who he's retiring. So we got to make sure we get somebody in his seat that is absolutely phenomenal. Not what's the black gentleman's name out of Kentucky? That's basically a Mitch McConnell light. I don't want that gentleman. So if you live in Kentucky, do not vote for the black guy that was like, I believe he was like Attorney General of Kentucky before. Daniel Cameron, I believe his name is. If I remember, correct me in the comment section. I don't want a Daniel Cameron, but in Texas, John Cornyn. I would prefer a Ken Paxton. In I believe it is Carolina. There's some other places, right, where we need to get rid of some rhinos. Some folks are retiring. Some folks could be primaried. We definitely got to get rid of the rhinos in the party via primary or just replacing them like a Mitch McConnell, right? Those are the things that I think we should really be focusing on. But let's jump back into AOC because she's an absolute fraud.
Okay, so someone asked me to expose AOC and to give her background. Say less. So AOC, also known as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is U.S. Representative of New York's 14th Congressional District. So the way she portrays her life is in such a woe is me. I was in a working class. I lost my father at a young age. I had to work to help pay the bills. I came from the Bronx. I'm a Bronx girl. But in actuality, she was born in Parkchester, Bronx, moved 40 minutes north of the Bronx. She grew up in the suburbs, Westchester County, which now homes are selling for like $900,000 for perspective. AOC attended Yorktown High School, a very prominent high school, again, in the suburbs, but she's a Bronx girl. So back in 2019, when she was running in office, she said that she would be portraying and representing the working class. And I find that ironic because her father was an architect. She was actually from a middle-class family, and her father, that small-owned business that he owned, he founded an architectural firm. His architectural firm's name is Kirschbaum and Ocasio Roman Architects, PC. So most of her campaigning is about how she was a bartender. She had to work to help provide for her family after her father's passing. Her father passed from lung cancer, but in 2008, she was a sophomore in college at that time. So after her father's passing, the company that he started, it didn't just end. It's still in existence, bringing in like over $500,000 revenue annually. Even if she were to work as a bartender to help pay the bills, wouldn't you think that she would attend college nearby in New York and not out of state at a private university, Boston College? Boston College currently costs $93,000 for out-of-state students. So when AOC is in front of minority groups, I notice her accent changes. She starts using words like ain't. So she was in front of a minority group and she's saying, I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You're right, AOC, there is nothing wrong with being a bartender, but what is wrong is changing your dialect and your tone to suit the audience that you're thinking appeases to them. The Democratic Party I find funny because it has a tendency to just have their people switch up accents based on who they're talking to. Jasmine Crockett does the same thing, and so does Kamala Harris. So what's my message? My message here is it's okay to relate to people, but it's another to just lie about your upbringing to appease to people that you think will relate to you. There's no need to be ashamed of your upbringing, how you were raised. Talk about the actual history of how you were raised, but to say you're from the Bronx, you come from a working class, a small business owner that your father was, it's just not accurate. So my personal opinion, another plant in the Democratic Party.
Facts. I mean, she is an absolute plan. We'll get into that a little bit here in a second, but I want to show you guys where she was actually from. Yorktown, okay? You can see the map here, Yorktown, which is damn near an hour away from the Bronx, okay? Almost an hour away from the Bronx. So how were you raised an hour away from where you were actually raised? You went to school in Yorktown. That's where you lived, in Yorktown. But you claimed the Bronx. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. And you can't tell me that she was constantly... Now, yes, there are some folks, very few, who do make a commute, okay, for work that is quite long. Not many will make an hour-long commute, especially just to be a bartender, right, which is what she claimed to be. And there's nothing, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a bartender. I believe everybody has a role in life, right? But to drive an hour to be a bartender, I think it's a stretch. I think it's a stretch. I think she's absolutely lying, in my personal opinion, and based on this map. And y'all can let me know if any bartenders are watching. Maybe there's something about bartending that I don't know. Maybe bartenders make crazy amounts of money in bigger areas. I don't know. And so the hour-long commute would actually be worth it. Even, because bartenders obviously work in the middle of the night, bars close, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. Okay. Depending on where you're at, where you're located, or what kind of bar you're going to. So making that commute in the middle of the night, bartenders, let me know. What would it take for it to be worth it to you to drive almost an hour away, 45 minutes, and that's like no traffic, right? That's the fastest route. Y'all let me know in the comment section, man. But I think it's a stretch, right? Based on who the Democrat Party actually is. And, one of the other things that she touched on, because the Democrat Party is absolutely fake, is her code switching, right? Her accent switching. And let's hop into that. And shout out to Benny Johnson for this clip.
I speak like a girl from the block.
And again.
I grew up first generation in the Bronx.
And again.
Girls from the Bronx are welcome everywhere.
In fact, AOC just pulled the Bronx girl card again this week, responding to President Trump, saying she would eat a Queens boy like Donald Trump for breakfast.
I don't think he knows how to deal with a girl from the Bronx.
Something's very wrong here. What functional adult repeats where they're from this often? Someone who's lying. And here's the dirty little secret. AOC is not actually from the Bronx. AOC was an infant. Her family has lived in a beautiful little hamlet called Yorktown Heights. This little town is the opposite of AOC's gritty, downtrodden, working class persona. It's clean and beautiful and safe. The neighborhood that AOC grew up in is well off, leafy and manicured. AOC went to elementary, middle, and high school here. She graduated from Yorktown High, where she went by the name Sandy Cortez. And then she graduated Boston University with an economics degree. Since AOC is about to run for president, we thought it would be important to investigate.
So you saw that there, okay? Once again, shout out to Benny. But when you've just absolutely just been lying, just blatantly lying, should we believe anything else that you say? And I'm talking about before. Like, forget about this. But when you've been lying before, and then we get to this, where you tell us constantly, oh, I'm from the Bronx, saying you can't deal with the Bronx. And there was a great point made there. Why do you constantly need to mention where you're from? Like, isn't that weird? It's one thing that I've noticed the Democrat Party does. The Democrat Party always says that they're loved, kind, and accepting, and blah, blah, blah. They do the whole nine. We're loving, we're kind, we're accepting, blah, blah, blah. We love everybody. But then when you really dig down, you realize, oh, no, they're not. They only love you if you agree with them. They're only kind if you accept what it is that they want to portray. They're only, generous to you or accepting to you or will welcome you in as long as you agree with their ideology. Because at the very moment that you don't, all of that nonsense goes right out of the window. But that's what they always say out of their mouth. And if you have to tell me that you love me, then you don't actually love me, right? I should be able to feel that. I should be able to know based upon your actions, based upon our daily interactions, that you love me. You shouldn't have to tell me. But the fact that the fact that you do have to constantly try to tell me, the fact that you do have to constantly try to tell me that you're from the Bronx, that sends some antennas up, It tells me personally that you're lying. Why do you need to tell me that? I should already know that, right? I should already know that you love me based upon how you treat me. I should already know that you're from the Bronx based upon the research that I've already done, based upon your background. Why do you need to tell me that you're from the Bronx? See what I mean? Just saying. I'm just saying.
That very real high school yearbook photo that's been floating around. The one where she's a smiling honor student in leafy, suburban Yorktown Heights. That's right. Bronx born? Well, technically. Raised in Westchester since age 5? Also. Yes. Graduated Yorktown High in 2007 right alongside orthodontists and second home bangers. And the photo? A super polished headshot with her real name, Sandy Ocasio. And now that it's resurfaced, she's not clarifying. She's doubling down. She literally called critics embarrassing themselves for questioning her working-class Bronx girl claims, even though she lived in the Bronx fewer years than she's been in Congress. I mean, imagine someone calling themselves a Detroit kid after moving to the suburbs before kindergarten. That's not a vibe. That's a branding strategy. But it gets better, because she says that her identity is still shaped by the Bronx because her family is from there. Sure. And I'm shaped by Hogwarts because I read Harry Potter. Look, if AOC wants to rep the Bronx, that's fine, but don't just forget about Yorktown because it doesn't pull well. Call it what it is. Congressional cosplay with a hint of PR flair.
Facts, you know, but we're used to this from Democrats, man, because you guys remember the guy by the name of Beta O'Rourke, right? He called himself, and I'm looking at the wrong camera, sorry guys, Beta O'Rourke. His name isn't Beta. I mean, although he, you know what, I'm gonna be nice. I ain't gonna, it's kind of ironic that he calls himself Beta. That would actually just register to me. The fact that he calls himself Beta. Okay, but his name is Robert. Robert. His real name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, which thankfully he's lost Texas, I believe, twice now. So the same as old girl down in Georgia. What's the black Stacey Abrams? Stacey Abrams, I believe her name is. So yeah, thankfully, right, Mr. Beta O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke. Thankfully, they both lost their states twice now. So I highly doubt we're going to see them anytime soon ever again, right, in either one of their respective states. But here is the yearbook of Mrs. Sandy Cortez. Right there. Boom. There you go. Okay. And Yorktown High School. There you go. Liar. She's a liar, liar, liar. What a shame, man. What a shame. And it says right over here, I'm a Bronx girl. You should know that we can eat Queens Boys for breakfast. You're a Bronx girl, but you went to Yorktown High School. Okay. Make that one make sense. You can't. I bet you can't. But, you know, it's no surprise that these folks are actors, because that's literally how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or Sandy Ocasio-Cortez, came about. It was a calling cast, right? She was basically an actor from the very beginning.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not really the Congresswoman of New York's 14th Congressional District. She is essentially an actress. She's merely playing the part of a New York Congresswoman. I know this sounds crazy, but bear with me. In 2017, a group called the Justice Democrats held auditions for potential congressional candidates that they would run on their platform for various congressional seats throughout the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's brother, Gabriel, submitted her for the role. Now, I've auditioned for many acting roles in my day. I've also cast many of my own projects. I know how this works. If you find somebody with star power, even if they don't 100% fit the part, you go with it. Obviously, AOC has star power. Just look at her. She's a superstar, the most famous person in Congress, maybe ever. Their casting was perfect. Now, I didn't have to go digging for evidence for this because they freely admit it. They brag about it.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
My brother told me that he had sent my nomination in the summer, but I was like literally working out of a restaurant then. I was like, there's no way.
A casting call. They had a casting call. They cast Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the role of Congresswoman.
Boom. And we've talked about that previously in a past video long ago. So if you missed it, I guess you can scroll back a couple of years and find that one. But yeah, so she literally got involved in politics via a casting call. Literally. She admitted it. Her brother submitted the application and she made it all the way through and won. Literally paid actors. She said it out of her own voice. She didn't say paid actors out of her own voice, but that her brother submitted her name and everything, her information, to a casting call. And you just heard one of the people involved in the casting call admit that too. So this isn't speculation. This isn't digging. This isn't, oh yeah, we're, right-wing extremists are just making things up. Like, no, they said it right there on camera. These are paid actors. And that is the entire Democratic Party. Paid actors. Faking where you're from to try to gain sympathy because you are actually from an affluent neighborhood and not from, a lower class neighborhood. You wanted to portray like you were from a lower class neighborhood, so I guess you could be more relatable to your constituents, which makes no sense in my humble opinion. You shouldn't be embarrassed about where you're from, as one of the people in this video said. I don't think you should be embarrassed by that. Like, you're from where you're from. You should be proud of where you're from. There's nothing wrong with being where you're from. We can all, empathize and upgrade or whatever, based upon where we're from. There's no issue with that. But you see time and time again with the Democrat Party that they're paid actors, but two, they also try to portray something that they actually aren't. You see that time and time again. And I brought up the example of Beta O'Rourke, whose real name is Robert. Why do you call yourself Beta? As if that's your real name. For the longest time, I actually thought that was his actual name. Beta O'Rourke. I thought that was his legit name. And I'm sure a lot of people still do. But his real name is Robert. Robert Francis O'Rourke. Come on now, bro. Stop it with the nonsense. Stop it. Anyway, y'all let me know your thoughts and feelings about this in the comments below. Do you think the Democrat Party will ever come away from being absolute frauds, just faking it, being paid actors? I think they will eventually, but it's going to take quite some time. We're going to be beyond the 2028 election. It's going to be in the 2030s when the Democrat Party actually completely changes. That's my humble opinion, but what's yours? Thanks for tuning in as always. Peace and love. I'm out.